Hi, Eva here. Today we're going to paint some snow plants. I have the tracing here of a snow plant. Here, like a little tracing like that. And as you can see here, I did it on an 8x10, smaller piece. So it'll fit on that and you can still get some background in. And if you'd rather do a bigger piece, like this, or here is one that's a little bit further along. See here? You can also do that. So either way, doesn't matter. Same methods, just less paper to deal with here. And we want to get a little background in. And so first, I'm just going to decide where I want to see kind of the edge of the little hill or whatever they're growing down here. And then you're looking into the forest, and then at some point you see where the ground gives way, and you see just the trunks and whatever is in the background. So the only place you don't want to put it is in the middle of your page. So that's what you want to think about. And you can also see I scooted my ice plants a little bit over to the side. I did not put them smack dab in the middle, because we always want to try and avoid the middle. That's composition and design. So if you kind of figure out where the middle is and then go a little bit up or a little bit down off to the side, like towards the corners. Not all the way out to the corner, obviously, but so this would be a good place. Since they grow out of the ground, they would be, going up wouldn't make that much sense, because I don't want to paint a whole bunch of pine needles or something in the foreground. So I just traced them on there. And you can do it either with holding up, your paper and the tracing in the window, or you can use the carbon paper or the graphite paper. It's not carbon, it's graphite paper. And it's also called transfer paper, and this is the kind I use. Wax-free, it has to say, and the brand that I have found is Sorel. It has to say wax-free, contains no wax or grease. That's very important, because a lot of the transfer papers, they have wax or grease in them, and then you can't erase the lines, and they're going to repel the watercolor, because water and oil, water and wax, water and grease, they do not mix. So that's important. And I know they also come in colors. I like to get the gray one that's with graphite on the back side. That's the side that transfer the lines for you. So if you're using that type of paper, you want to have the graphite side down onto your watercolor paper, and then you have your drawing on top. The best way of doing it is really to place your drawing on your paper wherever is a good place, and then take a little piece of tape it there, and then just scoot this paper in between, and because that way you can kind of lift it up and see if you got all the lines. So that's the best way. It's not very good, I think, to try and hold it with your hand, because I swear, you're gonna, there's gonna be something happening, and you get off, and then it's impossible to find where where your lines are. So that's kind of annoying when that happens halfway through, because it's not that much fun to trace, I don't think. So I'd like to get it out of the way ASAP. So here is that. And then I think it's kind of great to have a couple of tree trunks in the back of these. So I want a really big trunk that's close by. So here, maybe a big old trunk, and I can just see a little bit of it. And then, since this is a smaller one, there might be a couple of smaller little branches, or not branches, but trunks further away. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll do another one here. And there. And then I'm just going to leave that blank, I think. Am I? Or maybe I'll put another one here. So that's coming up from behind here. That way my background's taken care of. So that's a tree trunk this is a tree trunk and this is a tree trunk. I don't like that line, but I'm not going to mess around with it here. I'll fix it. And then what I usually like to do is I like to either mask or tape out those trunks. It's really easy with masking tape. So if you want to use masking tape, I like to use the blue. And you can just, here I don't worry so much about that it's straight lines because I can rough those up later. So here's, and then I stay away a little bit from those flowers. They're really fungi. They're not really flowers, but they look like flowers. So you can see, then you can mask out. If you have kind of bigger shapes, it's very easy to do it with a masking tape instead of with a masking fluid. But if you prefer, you can certainly do it with masking fluid. So let's see here. Just tear that one there. And you can go down like this. There's that. And here on these smaller ones, you can, I don't have to follow my lines there. I can just cut something out. So I do have an X-Acto knife here if anybody wants to borrow that, or if you have it yourself. Don't cut on the brand spanking new tables. Use a board before you cut. And then, you know, you can cut out a couple of smaller sized tree trunks that are further away. There. And let's see if that works. It should work. And so here's one. And I'll put that more like that. There's one. And so they don't go very far down because, you know, they're so much smaller. That means that they're further away. So you can see that's how I can just tape them out really fast. And I'll leave my knife out if you want to do that. And you can also tear. And I have the fatter tape that tears pretty well.
That's a tree? That's huge. It's
what?
Redwood. It's a redwood.
This one, no, but we're really close up. These, it has to be in proportion. Don't do little skinny trees like that behind the flowers, close up to them, because that means these flowers are ginormous. That means that they're bigger than you. You got to think about proportion, right? So that's why right behind them I want a fat line for the tree, because that tree will be a lot wider than one of the flowers.
Have you got more trees, or do you?
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, I have tape somewhere in my bag, so I'm good. So and I don't have to.
Close-up of that.
That's a real close-up of these, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a close-up. You can see here, you know, it's a close-up. And then just imagine that it was a tree behind them, and that would definitely be, you know, definitely this fat.
I get it.
They're
Yeah.
only a couple inches high in real life.
They're like this, I would say. You know, all depending on how far along they are, but, you know, they're not tiny. They're not little tiny things, and they're not ginormous things either.
That's a big tree.
That's not really that big of a tree. If the flowers are like this and the tree's like right behind them, you know, you definitely want to have the tree wider than one flower. And I have some pictures I can show you on my phone that I took as late as this morning, some of them to get, because I had that, you know, I have started teaching this one in another class too, and I had exactly the same kind of reaction, you know, with the trees, or some of them had already done their design. And then I said, wow, those are some big plants, huh? And then it was kind of like, what do you mean? I said, well, look at the tree. The tree's skinnier than one of the flowers. You know, which it can be when it's further away, but with its closer ones, no, they would not be that. So that's something to do with perspective also. Perspective is not just that thing about, you know, the two train tracks, or, you know, that goes together. Perspective is also here in the woods where the trees get smaller and smaller. They don't get smaller and smaller, they just look smaller and smaller the further away they are. And so that's why these trees are skinnier, because they are further away already. So I just wanted to show you how I'm going to then outline the little snow plants. So here, I use this one, but any stick you have, the back of a brush, whatever, that'll totally do it. And I just go and outline the outside of them. You don't even have to do each individual if you don't want to, only where things show up in between. So I could just do like this, and I do a couple. So kind of like this, just get the shape of this one, and then these two overlap, so I don't have to mask in between. I just want to give myself a border so I don't get any paint inside these snow plants, because I really don't want that. And if you want to mask out the bottom, do it a little bit like I'm doing right now. I'll hold it up in just a second so you can see. Because you don't want like a straight line across there, because there's going to be grasses and weeds, you know, stuff in front of them. So I'm just going to do one more so you can kind of see.
What is that thing you're using as a brush?
Yeah, it's just a stick I have with some rubber on it. It doesn't matter so much. If you just use the back of a brush, that'll work too. Or a stick, or this one is kind of like I think it's a tool for ceramics, as far as I know. So it has a little rubber tip on it. And I also have some other ones I'll show you that I use sometimes. You know, in a lot of artists, I guess, still use a brush, an old brush, but you ruin the brushes quickly, and it's a lot of, you know, rinsing it off in soapy water and that kind of stuff that I'm not into. So I just use any kind of a tool. And here, since this is nothing super precise, this will work just fine. So let's see here. This one goes down and in like that, and up here. So anyway, I'm going to finish this off. But can you see, I do the, if you want to mask off at the bottom to make sure that nothing travels up that way, do them irregular. Don't give them like a straight line, because then you have already kind of set, you've given yourself some shapes for little grasses and things like that that can stick up in front, so that you can get those snow plants into the ground so they're not like stuck on with a straight line. Because if you look at it here, see, you can't really see, right? I mean, the bottoms are always kind of obscured on anything that comes out of the ground. They're not like straight lines. There'd be straight lines if they came out of cement or something, but they don't. So that's really the prep. Just get those isolated, and I'm not even going to worry too much about, because the tree trunks are going to be darker, so I'm not even going to worry too much about that. I might just extend that line to remind myself. So that's that, and if anybody wants to borrow my tools for applying masking fluid, I mean, you're certainly welcome. I also use these here sometimes. These are also some other, they're embossing tools, I think they're called. And I bought them like that. I do use anything where I don't have to clean it. That's how it is with me. All we need to do is get some colors out. I'm going to use my usual suspects. My three primary colors: French Ultramarine Blue, Transparent Yellow, and Quinacrodone Red. I'm not going to use very much red. I'm going to use mainly the blue and the yellow, because I want my background mainly kind of green. And I have it a little dirty in here, so maybe I should clean up. That was the French Ultramarine Blue. It had a little red in it, so there. So I'm just going to get some more of that. Now, because I'm demoing on my small piece, I don't have very much background once I've masked out the trees, but I still have a little something in between, and that's looking through the tree trunks. And before you go back down to your seats, I'm going to grab my phone and show you what it looks like when you look in through a bunch of trees out in the woods, just so you have that visual. Whoops, got a little green there. So put another one here. it's gonna mix anyway, so I'm not too concerned. And I think I have enough red. All right, so I am just going to, my dirty brush is there, and gonna just wet around the tree trunks, just down to the little line I put where the land and the foreground is. So I just put a little bit of water in between here, and it goes down just a little bit there. And that tree trunk is obscured a little bit by that plant. So just water on, easy breezy. And then I'm going to put some blue on. How far do I go down? To here. And down here. I think I must go down a little bit further here. That's the tree trunk. Got to keep myself on the straight and narrow. And a little blue up here. So it's very, very simple doing this part. This is really just background. There's got to be something in between these trees, right? So we just, and I'm not even going to rinse out my brush. I'm just going to stick my dirty blue brush into my yellow and put a little bit of that on, and then you know, it's going to form some greens because that's what blue and yellow do. They make greens. And here. And I'm going to continue with my dirty brush, and I might just put a little bit of the red in here and there. Can you see how that then kind of gives me a few brown tones, and that would be great. I don't want it too brown because, you know, I have my trunks. There's that. And since I don't have very much, I think that's a little too, I don't want too bright, because the bright is these flowers. Those are the bright ones. The rest here is just kind of background. I think we're good here. Not too worried about this part. Don't want it so blue there, so if I don't want it that blue, I could put a little yellow in there. Just a little bit more red here and there. Just because I have too much fun, that's the problem here. I kind of like that. Can you see how, I mean, it's just the three primary colors, and you know how it is. Once they mix and mingle, they neutralize each other. So I know if I just have it wet into wet, I put all three primaries in, it's not going to be too bright. And if I see a spot that I felt was too bright, that's when I just put one of the other colors in. If I see it's getting too green, then I ask myself the serious question, Eva, what is the opposite to green? Well, that's red. Okay, so if I put red into the green, that's going to dull it down. And if it's yellow, then purple, which means blue and red. So, see, I got to get a little bit of purple here, actually, and I like it. If I like it, I leave it. That's my motto. If I like it, I leave it. And now I'm just going to take a piece of this plastic wrap, and I've used this before, but it doesn't matter. They can be reused, so that's the beauty of that. And just going to do like this. Straighten it out a little bit. And then I'm just going to very gently lay it down. And I think I can do it kind of like this. And so very loosely, I lay it down. And then I hold a little bit down here, and I'm kind of pulling it up a little bit because I want some vertical shapes. You see that? Mm-hmm. If I do that, I get some vertical shapes. Let's see if we can pull this out a little bit more so I can get a pattern here. I'm after some patterns that could be interpreted as some distant trees in the background. That's what I'm after here. So that's why I want some vertical shapes, mainly vertical shapes, but also some crisscross can be fine because that can then be branches and who knows what. All this stuff that's going on in the back of the woods. So here. There's that. I think I'm good. And then I kind of, you know, mush it around a little bit, and I press it down, and I look at the shapes, and you can reposition if you don't like what you're seeing, or you think, oh, I didn't really get any shapes. And then you press it down like this, and then it just needs to dry. And here there's not very much space in between, so it's limited, you know, how much fun we can have in here. But if you have on the bigger pieces, of course you have more. So that's it, and it just has to dry. So can you see, you can kind of tell, can you see that? So it's kind of like it creates some pathways for the pigment to run along here where it's still wet. So you want to do, this only works if you put it on when it's wet. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. And then I'm just going to let it dry. So mine's dry. I got some nice patterns. I'm pretty happy with them. I mean, you know, I got a little something going on. And for those little tiny shapes, that's definitely enough. And so now I'm going to be gently peeling off my masking tape. So be a little careful when you do that, that you don't rip your paper. And you can see I didn't follow my pencil lines. Surprise, surprise. So I'll just take those off with my kneaded eraser. And this is a big trunk. I made the trunks a little bit bigger because I think they kind of needed that. I mean, that doesn't leave much background, but oh well. Doesn't matter. The trees are also background. So here, I'm also going to pick this off. This is, oops, try not to pick that up. And here's my big fat tree trunk. If you peel the masking fluid, the masking tape up from the edge, that's where you have to be really careful. This is where it would rip the paper if you just, so you just want gently pulling away from it like that. And if you have some of the masking fluid touch the paper just like I did there, it's going to remove the masking. But see, and here I have it too. So I probably should, to keep myself in a safety zone. Can you see I ripped off a little bit of my masking fluid there and there. So I should probably save myself some heartache and just get that back on. And then by the time I'm ready to paint around there, it'll be dry. So let's just do the wise thing for a change. Let's be wise today. Oh, this is where I wanted to just seal that back up again, that little edge that I lost. And then here, down here, and then it was a little bit up here. There, and like that. So now I have those shapes back, and they're protected. And then here, this one I want to take off because that was one just to mask out the side of the tree. And I could have sworn I saw. Yeah, that was, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted. So I just want to take this off. So now it's just a matter of getting the tree trunks in, and that's a lot of fun. I got all my colors. Oops, I need one other tool out, my little credit card. And I'm going to start with this one. I put a little bit of water down the middle, like that. Can you see it? Yeah? Good. And then, I think I'm going to move over to this brush. On the, so where's my light coming? I think my light's coming from there. So I'm going to take a little bit of the red and dip a little bit of the tip into the yellow. And I'm going to put a little bit of that color, kind of an orangey color, down the sunny side of the tree. Down here. A little bit more of the yellow. And here. There. And then I'm going to rinse that out. And now I'm going to dip my brush into some of the French Ultramarine blue. Dab, dab. And then I'm going to go down the other side of the tree with the blue. That's on the shadow side. And you can see, I'm just finding the edge of the tree. You can see how it runs in towards the middle where it hits the water. So now I know I have that established, shadow side and sunny side. And then I'm going to get a little bit more of my blue, and then I'm going to use this puddle over here as my brown puddle. I have a reddish brown, and then I have kind of a little bit more blue in it, brown. See how I have a nice dark brown here? Because I have a little bit more blue. It's blue, red, and yellow. They'll do this. And here it's more with the red, so it's a little bit warmer. So I have two browns. And before things dry on me, I'm gonna go in and just go over the colors I put down. And can you see how they're bleeding in?
What color is that again that you're doing?
That's the one that I just mixed, red, blue, and yellow.
Red, blue, and yellow.
That's the three colors. I mean, I'm operating with the three primary colors, and then I'm going to take the little bit warmer one over here. I can take a little bit more of that orangey color. So I'm not rinsing out my brush in between doing this, because you know I don't want it to be like rainbow trees. But still, I want to have a little fun with some fun colors. So I'm going to go in and dip into a little bit more of that darker brown that I created with the red, blue, and yellow. It's French ultramarine blue, quinacrodone red, and transparent yellow. And so I have a little time, because it's still wet, so you can see how it runs. So I can have a little fun with it. And while that dries just a little bit, I'm going to make sure that I don't get a hard edge down here. Get my brush out properly. So down here at the bottom, I just don't want a hard edge, that's all. So I just go in with a thirsty brush and just kind of make that edge kind of softly disappear into the undergrowth here. Then later that'll give me the opportunity to paint back in there. And in the meantime, I need a thicker paint so I can make it real dark. So I'm going to take some of the French ultramarine blue and try not to have too much water in it. Whoops. Big clump landed over there. That's okay. Mush it around, because we don't want to paint with the clumps in our pigment. And if we can help it, and here is a big clump that could possibly be trouble. Let me get it out. There. So here's that. I put a little bit of that red in here, and then I need some yellow. Maybe a little bit more of that brown. Can you see how I'm getting a real dark, kind of a almost blackish grayish, and here's a little bit browner. Put a little bit more red in, a little bit more yellow in. Goes green. There. All sorts of different darks. And before it dries on me, I want to get some of those in, because I want it to be darker than the background on this shadow side. And I can also do a few lines like that. There we have it. Load it up down here. Yeah, I like that. So, clean out my brush, dab, dab. And now things are beginning to dry a little bit on this side, and not, you know, they're wetter here. You can see it's shinier because, you know, that's where I kept working with more pigment. And then I take the rounded corner of my credit card and I scrape some of these markings in that we have on these evergreens. You know, they have these vertical, look out, they have these vertical markings. And so if you scrape in where it's really wet, the pigment's going to run back together again, and it's going to form a dark ridge. And where it's beginning to dry, you can see I get some highlights. And that's what I'm after, highlights and lowlights. Can you see how this is beginning to take on the look of these evergreens that we have up here? And if you want to go in and I loaded up my brush with one of those darks that I created, and you can go in and then put a few of these darks while it's still damp, so it'll flow out a little bit, behind some of those highlights, so you can get even more dimension in these trunks. Dark pushes back, light brings forward. And so that's, you know, I'm after, you know, these tree trunks, they're not smooth. They have ridges in them, and a lot of texture. And so you can have as much or as little fun as you want here. But there they are. And you can also use the pointy part of the credit card if you want some finer lines, but most of the time I like to use the rounded edge here. I think that's just a perfect texture. And they have kind of a vertical shape to them, or look to them. So that's how I'm going to paint in all the trunks, like that. It's a bunch of fun, and you can see just, now I have my colors for the next one, and I probably need to get a couple of clean reds and yellows, just because now I dirtied everything up. But you can paint in the trunks now. I think yours will be dry enough to do that.